Hey everyone, I'm Crystal Jigrup, and this is Empowered by Women. In August of 2021, I launched Book of Bijou, which is a line of chic and innovative jewelry storage. And in January of 2022, we expanded into what you now see as the Empowered by Women platform. I really wanted to create a centralized space where we can really put emphasis on our mission of women empowerment and community over competition. It really truly does fill my cup to be surrounded by so many of you inspiring women, and the energy that you bring to me and our platform on a daily basis is unmatched. You really all do fuel me with so much motivation to continue doing what I'm doing, and for that, I thank you. Before we jump into the episode, please be sure to follow or subscribe to us wherever you are listening, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform. And also don't forget to share your favorite episodes with your fellow female founders so that we can continue growing our platform and furthering our mission. All right, let's go ahead and jump into this next interview with another incredible woman in entrepreneurship that I know you guys are going to absolutely love. Today, we have the beautiful Sapha Pardo Heckman. She is a women's embodiment and empowerment mentor. She blends feminine embodiment, emotional mastery, and introspective practices to guide women in reclaiming personal serenity and transforming their lives. With over a decade of experience, she helps clients excavate subconscious wounds and limiting beliefs, fostering self-compassion and inner power. And through her compassionate guidance, she facilitates this beautiful journey for women to reconnect with their purpose, embody authenticity, and step into fulfillment, creating a safe space for growth and self-love. So beautiful. Sapha, thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited for this conversation.
I am so excited and I'm so happy to see you again. So thank you for having me.
Likewise, we haven't chatted very many times. It's probably only been a couple of times, but every single time it is an amazing conversation with you. I love your energy, and I'm excited to be able to share that with our audience today. So obviously, well, actually, let's start off with where are you joining us from?
So I am in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am loving that the sun is finally out. So very excited.
Love it, love it. I think you might be our first Tennessean. That
What?
that we
That's
should call them.
crazy. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
I love it. Okay, so obviously I gave you this beautiful intro, but I want you to kind of dive into it a little bit deeper for us. So tell us a little bit more about your background and how that led you to the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, so I was thinking about this today, and I think the most sincere answer that I could give is that I grew up truly and really honestly believing that I did not belong anywhere in this world. I really thought that there was no person, no place, no space for me. And so what that deeply ingrained subconscious wound started doing was it started eroding my sense of self. I had very little grasp of my sense of self identity. I didn't know how to relate to the world around me because of that. I tended to dissociate very quickly. That's one of the reasons why I actually love stories and movies so much, is because I did learn to dissociate through them. And so I created this really at odds world in my life where I saw myself as an other thing. I didn't see myself as the self with a capital S. I saw myself as this other, and this other very much lived at the effect of her world. And so, what's been really beautiful for me, and why I like to center my work in feminine embodiment around personal sovereignty so much, is because what I've discovered is that this idea that is sort of ephemeral and out there floating somewhere that we get to share with one another about self love sometimes doesn't land the way that we need it to land in our physical, in our spiritual, in our hearts, in our souls, in our minds, in a way that we feel like we can fully take up space in this world. I think that a lot of us have gotten into conversations with self that have become very at odds, very, I want to say almost like if we were like our own nemesis or in our own stories. And I think that that has robbed us of the ability to have a voice, to speak up, to be who we are, of authenticity. And in my case, it all started with what you would think is the smallest version of my story would be the eating disorder that ate away at me for so many years and decades, right? And then it started seeping into other areas of my life where I was not only dealing with the eating disorder, but stuck in a toxic relationship that lasted almost 13 years. And it was all of these little things that I was in an unhappy job. And I was just very much, it felt like I was surviving, if anything. And my life didn't feel like it had any taste. It didn't have any flavor. It didn't have any color. It just felt like I was going through the motions. And so the work that I do around personal sovereignty is very much informed from that journey, because as I was moving through that journey, I was able to sink my teeth into some beautiful psychology. I was able to heal in a lot of ways energetically. I was able to tap into feminine and masculine energetics. And that was a door opener. And little by little, I just started adding more and more to my cup until there came a point where it was overflowing, and that sense of self-identity was so deeply ingrained that that personal sovereignty just will not be stopped now. And so that's kind of what I want to see for every single woman out there, and that's the work that I do.
That is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, this whole entire journey of you kind of, like you said, like not having that sense of self-worth and not having that voice, but now where you are now and having that so profound and so deeply rooted that now it's overflowing to all of the women around you. That is truly amazing. So I wanted to dive into that a little bit more, this process of, leaving that relationship and starting to reclaim all these pieces of you and starting to dive into the energetics of life and allowing that to kind of guide you back to who you innately are. What was that process like? I mean, I've spoken to quite a few people on this podcast now where they were in toxic relationships and abusive relationships, and there's always this, I don't want to call it a phase, but this transitionary period where it is like, who am I? Who am I now that I'm outside of this relationship and now that I don't have someone else's beliefs and thoughts and words over my head dictating my every move. And it's always a process of trying to find out, like, I don't even know how to think for myself anymore. So what did that look like for you?
Mm-hmm. It's a slow burn. And if I'm being really honest, I think that one of the most beautiful things that I've discovered in the work that I do with women heart to heart and one on one is that really almost every woman that I have spoken to and worked with has gone through this in one degree or another, whether it's because their entire identity has been wrapped around their kids, or because they've really just only seen themselves as the CEO, or because they have only ever related to themselves as the good girl. There are so many different ways in which our minds create very particular narratives and very particular stories through which our own ego sense of self. So the ego, like I think we always misunderstand what the ego is. We say ego, we think that that means we're full of ourselves or we're narcissistic, and the ego really is the perception of self, and it's that it's there to protect you. And so what the ego does is it likes to tell you stories. It experience something, and it'll be like, oh, so because you were not chosen for baseball when you were a little kid and you were the last one to be picked for sports, that means that you are not good enough. And so now, in order to prevent ourselves from feeling like we are not good enough, what we have to do is we have to be the overachiever. Or it starts just creating this like really interesting tapestry of things. And so for me, it's that slow burn. It was the little moments of self-awareness and little moments of questioning. And I think for most of us, it's like that. It's that question in the back of your head that goes, but wait a second, like, who am I really? Why am I here right now? Why am I doing this? Do I really believe the things that I'm doing, saying, thinking, believing, acting, experiencing in my day-to-day life? Where is this coming from? Like, how did I land myself in this situation? For me, it was almost like I said, it was so strange to wake up in the morning and feel like a zombie. It was so weird to wake up and go through the motions and feel numb, to feel nothing other than exhaustion. And of course, there was always like points of happiness and all of this, but the bigger thing, that boulder that sits on your shoulders, the thing that you just look back and go, wait a second, why is this ruling over my world? Why is this my entire existence? And again, that for me, it was the eating disorder, it was a toxic relationship, it was the job, it was the things that I was like lived experience of Safa at that point was very heavy and very dense and so murky that there was the sense of like there was no life, there was no movement, there was this stagnancy. I always say that things that stagnate die, and not the kind of death that leads to rebirth. I believe there's this death to rebirth cycle always going through, but the stagnancy that really kills you is the one that just leaves you there. There's no movement, there's nothing else, there's nothing new breathing through you. So for me, that was the thing. It was the slow simmer, that was the little things, the little moments that in the back of my head I would hear myself like, you don't really believe that. Like, why did you just sit there and take that? Why did you not answer back? It was the little moments of doubt that would go, do you really believe that your worth is nothing? Do you really believe that you are only valuable if you're a size 0? Do you like, and it was little questions. And a lot of times I think the harsh thing about that is a lot of times the answer was yes. A lot of times it really came down to me believing those things because I hadn't had the chance to have deep conversations with myself. I always say that my work in my world, the work of loving the self and the work of self-reclamation and the work of empowerment of self works in the way of self-seduction. And I mean that, like, I always laugh when I say that. People are like, wait a second, are we about to talk about sexy things? And I'm like, nah, sort of. For me, the idea of self-seduction is this idea of let me take you out on a date. Like, let me get to know you, me, like as the self with a capital S. I want to know what makes you tick. I want to know what your thoughts are at this point in time in your life is very different from who you were yesterday. And I want to know what evolved you here, what brought you here, what makes you tick, what is your kink, like what is your existential kink. There's a book that I love, it's called Existential Kink, that is very like deep into like this shadow work that I love. And so there are so many aspects of that is where the invitation comes in. And for me, that if it wasn't for those moments that I allowed myself, sometimes on my yoga mat crying, sometimes with pen and paper, sometimes literally at Disney World watching the fireworks and just bawling like if my heart was breaking and wondering what the hell was wrong with me. Like, but if it wasn't for those moments, I probably would have never moved. I wouldn't have created this space. I wouldn't have chosen to see myself as the ultimate self authority in my life and said, you know what, screw this. I'm sovereign. I get to wear the crown here. I'm the one that decides where this road is going. I'm the one with the, hands on the wheel. So I'm the one at the helm. And that's for me what really made the transition. It was the little moments and it was the questioning and it was the ability to sit with self and ask and listen. Yeah.
There are so many really important gems that you were mentioning that I think we need to break down a little bit further. But I love this mention of like the self-seduction and taking yourself on a date and really having those conversations with yourself of like, okay, like how are you really feeling? And why are you really feeling that way? And how did that lead you to this point? But it seems like a lot of the things that you've been doing have really been like self-imposed inner work, right? Did you have kind of a system in place where you were like, okay, if I'm really going to step into my sovereignty, this is what the path looks like moving forward. And I'm going to commit to doing, whatever, like 30 minutes of mindfulness every day moving forward. Is that what it looked like for you? Or were you kind of just trying different things and was it like a long kind of crazy process?
So I'm a very intuitive led human being. I Ever since I was young, and this could be because my brain is wired uniquely, or it just, I don't know, it's because this is the beingness of Safa, but I have never done really well with very rigid structure.
Mm.
Um, I think that also comes from a lot of religious trauma that I experienced growing up because everything was, this is it. And if you don't do things this way, you're going to be broken. And it was very traumatizing for my nervous system, for my mind, for my heart, for everything. And so I did not do well with structure in that regard. So in my case, what still holds very true, and sometimes maybe to my detriment, but what still holds very true is that I follow my inner knowing, my inner guidance. I knew to listen and to start paying attention and to reach out for help when I needed to, when I was ready. Sometimes that reaching out looked interesting and it was sitting with a therapist and it didn't work. Or sometimes that was reading a self-help book and it was, sometimes it was just me, myself, and I in the yoga mat. But what I will say is that the quote unquote process was just one of gentle caring.
Hey, beautiful humans, really quick, did you know that hiring a virtual assistant saves people 14.7 hours per week on average? As our platform and my family continues to grow, I knew there was no way that I could keep doing it all alone. And I mean, who wants to anyway, right? So I finally made the leap to hire a VA, and it has been game changing. iWorker actually came recommended to me by a friend who also has a VA that she loves from there. And there's so much more to the agency that actually really drew me to them and made me feel comfortable taking that leap and making the commitment to bringing on a VA, which is a huge decision. Not only does iWorker ensure that their VAs are top tier, they're committed to hiring people from countries in crisis where the work that you're providing really does matter. Our worker was actually co-founded by a Venezuelan immigrant in response to the Venezuelan refugee crisis, which is why their mission is so profoundly rooted the way that it is. And most of their team, which is 65% women, which we love, they're able to support multiple family members thanks to the income that they're receiving from iWorker. My VA has been an absolute game changer, and she has a little one of her own, which makes me appreciate her work ethic even more and makes me feel really good that I did make the decision to go with iWorker. So if you are ready to start taking that busy work off of your plates so that you can focus on the work that really does matter in your business and in growing your business, head to iWorker. They'll take care of all the things: social media, video editing, graphic design, copywriting, you name it. Head to iWorker. It is going to be an affiliate link that's in the notes, but just know I do not take that lightly, okay? I only share things with you that I really do know and that I actually use and 100% will continue to support. So again, that link is in the show notes, but let's go ahead and get back to the episode.
And this is very much the way that I approach my clients too. It's so funny. I'm not the mentor you go to if you want someone to say, okay, step one, we're going to look at your core wounds today. Step two, we're going to look at your family, its internal systems. Step three, will we do those things? Very likely, yes. And I will allow your spirit to guide the conversation much the same way that I allowed mine to guide the conversation in my world. I allowed my own process to one step at a time, one breath at a time, one moment at a time. And then following that intuition, I was able to respond to the things that most deeply attuned to myself. Because again, we're talking about a process of self-seduction. If I was going to try and seduce you, I wouldn't just show up and be like, oh, you are going to like this because I say you are going to like this, Crystal. And that is so beyond connected to an actual delicious sense of seduction. You know what I mean? But if I show up for myself and go, I wonder if you're going to like this today. Let's see what this brings out in you. Let's see what this conversation is going to be like. Do you like this? Do you feel safe in this? Do you feel loved? Do you feel cherished? Do you feel taken care of? And if yes, then we go forward. And it's a process, by the way, too, that I've realized it's just never ending.
Yeah.
It's a process that I get to expand on every single day. Every single day, I learn something new. I hope that I don't ever consider myself a complete master in something. I feel like if I ever say I've completely mastered it, is because I've moved on to a different plane of existence. But I do see myself as the perpetual student. I do see myself as the one who's going to constantly be like, okay, what's next? Like, what is this modality and that modality? And even in school, I was the same. I studied psychology, even though that wasn't my degree, and I was still doing communications, and then I was doing cooking, and then I wanted to do fashion. It just was one of those things that I've always had it in me to go and search for more, because for me, it's the lived experience that speaks the most. It's not just my brain, and I'm very brainy, and I can always earn A's if I wanted to, but at the same time, what has given me the most delectable sense of livelihood has been allowing my inner sense to guide me and understanding. And I think that this is actually a really important caveat for those of us who are intuitively led, is like understanding that just because I'm following my inner knowing does not guarantee that I'm going to get a particular outcome. It just means I am following the voice of my highest good in this present time. And everything else is out of my hands. And what I get to do is show up as the queen that I am as the things unfold. And sometimes it's bittersweet, sometimes it's straight, just awful. And sometimes it's wonderful and marvelous. And it gets to be like so much more than I ever could have possibly imagined in my life. But that has been the process.
That last part that you said, so good about you just allowing yourself to step into your highest good. I have never heard anyone phrase it that way. Usually it's like your highest self, right? Where it's like you're excelling at all of these areas that you've always envisioned yourself excelling at. But then your highest good is like there's so much intention behind that.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I could like just revel in that phrase all day. And I think with approaching your life in that way of like, let me step into my highest good. And like you said, like you don't know what the outcome is, but as long as you are stepping into it that way, then you're doing what needs to be done to get you to experience all of the things that you're destined to experience in life. And that is always kind of like it could get sticky, right? It's not always a beautiful process, but it does allow you to be in this constant state of learning, which you mentioned, which I could not agree with more. I would 100% have seen, people step into that place of not wanting to learn more, right? And stepping into that stagnancy, and they're wondering, why are things not changing for them? There are so many opportunities for us to step into and to be in that mindset of like, okay, what's next? What's next? I want to learn more, even if it's not something that you are innately like, that's, this whole like feminine embodiment thing, like that's totally not me, but being open to immersing yourself in that kind of space and receiving that energy and having that open-mindedness, okay, like, oh, this is their perspective on how they would approach certain things or how they look at life, and seeing how that could potentially fit into your own life opens the doors to so many possibilities. There was something that you mentioned a little earlier, and it was this kind of pattern of death and rebirth. I wanted to dive into that a little bit more. Talk to us about that. What do you mean by death and rebirth, and how it's kind of like this ever occurring thing that happens in our lives?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I will try to pace myself because I could talk about this for like 5 days on end. So, okay, big breath. No, so everything in the universe is in a constant flow. It's in a constant dance, and it contracts and it expands and it contracts and it expands. And it's almost like that heartbeat, right? You think about how your heart contracts a little bit and then it releases. And that's how you get blood even flowing through your veins to live this amazing life that we are given. And universe is much the same. It's constant state of in and out and in and out. And sometimes that means there's going to come a point for something to come to a completion, and then after the completion, there's a pause, and then there's a space for something new to be birthed and for something new to be given breath. So it's this life in general does not show up as this one linear, very rigid, non moving thing. Life has this capacity of holding several different little deaths within the scope of just one lifetime. And those little deaths are going to serve as manure. They're going to serve as feeding. They're going to serve as a space for release. They're going to serve as a shedding. It's just this beautiful ability that life has of expressing itself. And it's so deeply connected to the divine feminine in particular, because just again, not to get too into the complexities of this, because this is a very, very huge conversation that I'm trying to compress into a few moments here. It's that there is this idea of the archetypal form of the divine feminine as coming into mother, maiden, crone. And if you think about those aspects, you think about nature too. You think about how nature goes through these cycles of death and rebirth and death and rebirth. And so you have the springtime and everything is like fluid and blossoming and it's like coming up, but it's coming after the winter, which was a death. Everything dies during the winter, everything dries out. There's this like quiet, there's this moment of, it's almost like a pause, it's almost like a reverie. There's like not a whole lot of exuberance and fire and all of that energy. There's the fall right before that, which is also leading into that space, is the preparation for the death. It's the breath before, where it's like asking for self introspection. It's asking for a moment to say, hey, what have we reaped? What did we reap post springtime and into the fullness of summer, which the summer is this like vibrant exuberance, giving birth. This is the mother realm, right? This is where we get creative. This is where we have the fire. This is where we feel our most amazing yet. And that leads into the scope of the crone, so to speak, where she really gets to ask, go internal, go ask yourself. This is the dating space. I think that I resonate with her the most. That's probably why I do what I do. But this is where she says, get to know yourself, get to know your shadow, look at where this is needing more light. Where is this needing more depth? What are the things that we need to take out completely? The things that we got to pull out from the very freaking root, the things that are killing you, the things that are not allowing you to thrive the way that you can thrive. Let's get them out. It's going to hurt. Sometimes it's going to be very painful. It can be very scary. It can be like the myriad of really challenging complexities. And once you get them out, once you go there, what you do is you take a pause and you take this moment and you grieve and you settle down and you take yourself into your own arms and you wrap yourself in a blanket and you love on yourself in the way that only a grandma could, like it's the way that you just like yearn to be held, just implicitly, no judgment, no anything. And for you to be able to let it all out. And after the grief has moved and evolved, little seedlings can now be planted where those roots of whatever was rotted or was no longer serving you or was like straight suffocating your tree of life, for example, where that was there once, now it's gone. Now we grieved it. Now we like moved to the soil and it was very difficult and challenging. Now we plant. And the planting is the birth of new life. And so you have this constant state of existence of birth and rebirth. And in our lives, we see it. We have friendships that we move into, and it's beautiful and it's amazing and it's lovely. And then they serve their purpose and it's okay for them to move on. And we have relationships that do the same. We have lived experiences. Maybe you have a career that you're so passionate about and it's amazing and it's the first day, and really by the time you get to like 5 years in, you no longer are fit for it anymore. And it's okay to say goodbye, and you have to mourn it and you have to grieve it. And I think a lot of the reason why sometimes we get stuck in our lives in general is because the idea, we can dream, we can do vision boards, we can manifest, we can be like, oh, my life's going to be amazing. I want to be on a yacht. I'm going to be like, sitting down with Snoop Dogg. I don't know, like something really grand and vast and like silly and amazing and delicious. And if we don't take into consideration that in order to get there, this version of us has to say goodbye, to die, that walk isn't going to be doable. Because that means this version of me, to get there, needs to let go of some things, needs to let go of some belief systems, needs to let go of some patterns, needs to let go of some fears, needs to believe in herself a little bit differently, needs to act, talk, walk, speak, breathe, embody differently. And that means that this version of me won't exist anymore. And that's sad. Getting emotional, but that's the way that it is. And that life and death, they're one and the same. They're just two sides of the same coin. And they get to breathe and they get to expand and they get to give us so much beauty. Life is worth living because there is death. So again, I could go on this for like 5 hours, but that is...
I could listen to you for 5 hours. It's like, keep going. I was like, does she have a book on this? It's so beautiful, everything that you're saying and the way that you're saying it. And I think just the concept in and of itself, I think is so important, because you're really normalizing this phase, right? That every single person on this planet goes through. And I think so often, I'm not sure if you work with a lot of entrepreneurs specifically, but I've seen within the entrepreneurial realm that there are a lot of, women that I've seen that kind of get down on themselves, right? When it is a down season, and they kind of take it as a personal flaw, right? I must be doing something wrong because this is the season that I'm in, because this is this period where it feels like there's this death coming. And it's my fault that it's not still alive and rising and thriving, right? But it's this natural flow that happens, and it happens for everyone. And a death, it's like you said, an opportunity for rebirth. And it's this opportunity to continue evolving and to bring all of these new elements of yourself that you've been harnessing and that you've been stepping into, and all this power that you've been bringing in and allowing yourself to feel and to to own. It's allowing you to step into that, right? So in plain terms, can you give us an example of something that you might have experienced within your own business of this kind of death and rebirth cycle?
Yeah. Geez. I mean, pick one. No, I am actually, it's funny, I'm actually going through a death cycle right now. Because look, to give you a little bit of a scope, when I started doing work to heal, to help women heal their hearts and their souls and their connection to body and self through yoga. Because in many ways, my yoga practice was one of the biggest doorways that I ever walked through to allow me to heal and to pause and to have those dates with myself. I'm able to seduce myself because I was able to get on my yoga mat. I am dead certain of that. And so when I first started, it started there. That had to take a different sense of evolution. And the first death was right there. As soon as I put that away, because I noticed that in that realm, I started serving at a different level. Now people were coming to me with life questions, which they have done since I was, it's funny enough, but like little. And so then that started taking on the hue of, okay, what else can we do? Let's talk about nutrition. So I got certified in nutrition, and we started doing that. And then I went through the life coaching phase. And now I've been a mentor for a while, and I've been calling myself a mentor on purpose for a very long time. And even that is now changing, and it's becoming so vast. I'm at a point where I am no longer like launching programs and going after the things that I used to go after in my business. And that is really challenging my edges. It's really challenging what that gets to look like, because it's like, what do we do if we're not following the steps 1 through Z, which I said I have a hard time following anyway, but I'm like, not right. I'm challenging and I'm moving and I'm evolving. What does that look like? And it's looking like such beautiful conversations. And it's looking like walking side by side with incredible women. And it's looking like mourning the version of me who thought that she had to wake up every morning and fit into a little box. And it's funny because we think that we are past these things, these lessons that we learn after we go through like a death. But what we don't understand is that what we're doing is we're moving through them deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Every time I get back and circle, be like, I've seen this lesson before. It is a deeper layer of where I was before. I had one of my mentors and one of my close friends as well said, it's not that we're like stuck in a hamster wheel, it's that we're going up a spiral staircase. And the thing is, when you do that, there does come a point, if you've never done this, if you've never climbed a spiral staircase, there does come a point where you're like, oh my God, am I moving at all? Am I going up? I just feel like all I see is this like loop and nothing is happening. And it's the same with life. And so in business, what I am experiencing right now is that shift. And it feels like a pause when sometimes all we want to do is move, 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 and push, push, push. So listen, for all entrepreneurs out there, I have been there. I am one of you. I understand. I like know what that's like, and it's tough. And I think the best medicine in those moments is to allow yourself to understand where you're at. Where are you in relation to your present self and in relation to your highest self and your highest good in this moment in life? If that means this is a pause moment, it's a pause moment. If this means is a like, let's go out and get them, then that's what it is. Is it your winter or your spring, your summer, or your fall? Like, where are you, right? And how is this serving you? Because the other thing that is really important in this, and probably the biggest takeaway I would say, is understand yourself almost like a warrior, right? We're really good at like, women power, blah, blah. We're okay. Part of that is understanding that sometimes we take up arms and we go hard, and sometimes we retreat. Warriors know when to go in and when to back up. So you have to give yourself permission to do that. I hope that that answered the question.
You did. And as you were talking, I'm like, okay, this is why you are a Women Thrive speaker. Everything you've been saying, I was like, oh my God, just like I need to hire someone to like make like all of these graphics when we edit our podcast so that you can just like highlight all of these beautiful quotes that you're saying, especially the hamster wheel where, in this cycle that we tend to be on, we think we're on this hamster wheel, but really it's this upward spiral staircase. That is mind blown emoji. Okay, my future editor, insert that here. So beautiful. And another thing that you kind of started saying that I really loved is how you were talking about like what it looks like, what this next step looks like. And you didn't describe it as like, oh, it looks like, this 3-step program that I'm going to be launching, or it looks like these 5 cities that I want to be in. It's all of these beautiful conversations that I'm going to have with all of these women. And the way that you're looking at it in that way, again, with so much intention behind it. And I think there is so much just beauty and genuine spirit and energy that you're bringing into the work that you do, that I can only imagine the transformations that you are allowing the women that you work with to see in their daily lives. I could talk to you all day, but obviously we've been going for quite a while, and unfortunately our time is cutting short. So to end it off, I really love how you've kind of like the way that you've described life and just walking through it. And even in the way that you operate your business, it's very like romantic, right? You're dating yourself. There's this the self-seduction that you mentioned. What is one kind of quick tip you can give to keep that romance going for yourself and for your life?
Okay, I love it. Not to take yourself for granted. This
Mm.
was one of the things that hurt the most when I was in that toxic marriage for so long, was that I always felt very taken for granted. And then what hurt most was that I realized I was taking myself very much for granted. I was like, wait a second. The first person to take me for granted is me.
Ah,
So don't take yourself for granted. Don't believe that you know everything that there is to know about you already and that you just are who you are and this is the way that things are. Like, don't believe it for a second. Give yourself the permission, the courage, the love, the devotion to really get to fall in love with you every single day. And some days you're not going to always like what's there. And that's great because it gives you a chance to then heal and love on yourself the way that a lot of times we wanted others to heal and love on us. You get to do the biggest task of that. It's up to you. So I do live a very romanced life. I do believe I get to wake up every morning and make love to every single thing that I do. And I take my friends out on dates and I literally date my clients. I believe that that is important because we need that sense of dedication, intention, care, tenderness. It's that soft touch that we're missing so much because we've been taught to just push and push and push and push. And we believe that everything has to have these like sharp edges, and that is great. And we need it, and it's important. Certainly, if I'm an Olympiad, I'm going to need this, right? And we also need this beautiful, soft, gentle, but very firm and very strong and very powerful aspect. And part of that is again, don't take yourself for granted. Be willing to wake up every morning and say, okay, how do I feel? And then who am I going to choose to be with all of this? Like, I'm feeling like this, and who am I going to choose to be? Because the most important part is you for yourself.
beautiful. So beautifully said. Mic drop. We can cut it right there. Sapha, you have been so incredible. Where can everyone connect with you and learn more and hear more and work with you?
Just love spending time with you. And everyone can find me on Instagram at your soulful goddess. That is my brand. It's really about you. You're a soulful goddess. So your soulful goddess is where you can find me. You can email me info at your soulful goddess. And you have a podcast called Mindfully Sovereign, which you are going to be in. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sapha. You have been amazing. Of course, all of those show notes will be linked below. So again, Sapha, thank you so much. And I mean, I'm sure there's going to be plenty more conversations we'll have in the future, but thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Another incredible interview with yet another inspiring woman in entrepreneurship. I hope you guys loved that episode just as much as I did. Before we leave off, if you yourself are also a woman entrepreneur, I would love for you to consider joining our Empowered by Women directory. We're looking for women-owned product and service-based businesses in the US to help us build the go-to place for our communities to find local women to shop with and connect with, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. All of the details can be found on www.empoweredbywomen.com/apply-directory. Of course, that's going to be linked in the show notes below, and you're also welcome to reach out to me anytime if you have any questions. But other than that, thank you again so much for joining us, and I will see you in the next episode.